Thank you all for coming to our first live recording of Teach Me About the Great Lakes. We're really excited about it. What a great opportunity to do it. Before we get started, I wanted to acknowledge something, and I'm speaking for me here, not for Carolyn or C. Grant or our guests or anything like that. There is a academic strike going on to in part try to affect change related to what is frankly a horrible situation right now with people protesting the systematic racism in our country. And it's really awkward for me to do this podcast during this time. And the reason that it's really awkward for me to do this podcast is because this podcast, I've come to realize, is an unbelievable reflection of my privilege. And the reason for that is that I get to act like an idiot. I get to reveal that I'm an idiot for an hour or so every time we do it in a way that, I'm fortunate to do because of the way that I look and because of the way that I was raised and because of things that I have no control over. And that's just absolutely the case, that, I get to be intentionally ignorant about all the topics, and I get to learn these wonderful things from amazing guests, but I get to do it in a way that I think is really enjoyable. But that is a reflection of frankly, the way my privilege, the way I look, because I'm a white person, white middle-class person in America. And so I recognize the awkwardness. We at Sea Grant, and me in my personal life, are doing many things to try to help with this issue, with equality, diversity, inclusion, systematic racism, some of which I'd be happy to talk about. But in all honesty, I would encourage you instead to, look at the session that was held earlier today. Look online. There's a lot of resources out there. And frankly, for me, speaking only for me as a person who grew up as a middle-class white dude in America, so approximately one of the luckiest people in the history of the world, it's incumbent on me to do that. And I would suggest to you that it might be incumbent on you to do that work as well. But so with that, we are going to go straight into our show. And I recognize the awkwardness, the slight awkwardness to it, because this is, while it's really educational and fun, there is a fundamental goofiness to it. And I like the fundamental goofiness, and I hope you do too. But that said, awkwardness acknowledged. So with that, we will kick in with the file that I've called TMATGL intro vocal theme. And you get to see another aspect of my privilege, which is that I can't sing, but I get to anyway. Teach me about the Great Lakes. Teach me about the Great Lakes. Welcome, everybody, to Teach Me About the Great Lakes, an exactly monthly podcast in which I get people who are smarter, more accomplished, and often better looking than I am to teach me all about the Great Lakes. My name is Stuart Carlton. I am Assistant Director at Illinois Indiana Sea Grant, and I don't know a lot about the Great Lakes, which is the point of this show. I'm so lucky to be joined today by my good friend, Carolyn Foley. Carolyn, how are you doing?
I am doing well. Thank you, Stuart. And I feel like today is the ultimate people who are smarter and better, harder working than us because we are talking to the International Association of Great Lake Research Lifetime Achievement Award winner.
Yeah.
So that means that is for those who are listening to this afterward, it's an association of researchers. They usually have an annual conference that has like 700 people at it, and they're all talking about all the work they're doing all over the world on Great Lakes.
You say that, and it is true. It's very exciting. But I was actually perusing my CV in preparation for this, and I found out two things. One, what I lack in accomplishment, I make up for in verbosity. And two, I am also an award winner. I got the third prize at the Georgia chapter of the American Fisheries Society conference in 2003. So,
congratulations!
Yeah, I mean it's one of the top things out there. So, I mean, I agree that we are very lucky, but it's not like many people win awards, Carolyn. Yes, but no, this is the Lifetime Achievement Award, and what a fantastic opportunity that is. And so we are going to interview Dr. Jan Syborowski, who's at the University of Windsor, where he is an emeritus prof, and he's also at the University of Calgary, where they're lucky to have him here, and he's an entomologist. And I've learned two things. One, I'm not supposed to mention the only thing I know about entomology, which is that we have an event at Purdue called Cricket Spitting. And
Jeepers Creepers.
Yeah, not supposed to mention that, so I won't. And I will also not mention that every time I hear entomology, I think bugs, because apparently they are not supposed to be called bugs.
Well, it's that not all bugs are insects, but not all insects are bugs.
Gotcha.
And there is more to aquatic invertebrates than bugs.
Hashtag not all bugs. Fantastic. Well, let's go ahead and stop this nonsense then, Carolyn, and we will bring on Dr. Jan Syborowski. I'm excited, though, because he's a researcher. We get to use the wildly popular researcher feature theme. So here we go. Researcher feature, a feature in which a researcher gonna teach us about the Great Lakes. Jen Siborowski, how are you today?
I'm just fine, thanks. Thanks for that wonderful musical entertainment. That's really great. One of the real features of the Great Lakes is the number of musicians around it. So
that is absolutely true, and of those, I am one of them. Wonderful. So, aquatic invertebrates is what you study. Is that right? What attracted you to studying invertebrates?
I've always been really interested in water, sort of wetlands and streams, and I always wanted to be a microbiologist. That's what I was in public school, because I thought those were little tiny cool things to look at. And actually, it wasn't until I was in third year at Arundel at the University of Toronto, and I took a course in freshwater biology, and I looked through the microscope and saw these aquatic insects, caddisflies with big cases and mayflies with gills, and I thought, those are the things to study. And so that's when I went from being a microbiologist, which is tiny stuff, to being an aquatic entomologist or aquatic ecologist or a stream ecologist, because that's where I got my start.
So for you, the insects are big, not small. You're coming from the bottom up there, not the top down, I guess.
When you look close enough, they're pretty big. Yeah.
Yeah. I will leave out the joke I almost just made. So So what is it about like mayflies? So I've seen mayflies. Like I saw a mayfly hatch on the Green River in Utah. I've got a different story. I won't tell about that. And I was like, oh, that's something. So what is it about those that like really are caddisflies that really got you going?
Well, there's an incredible amount of diversity. If you go to the Green River or any rocky stream and start turning over the rocks, you just find so much diversity sitting there. And they've all got these weird things that help them survive in streams, like gills and tusks and little nets that they can use to catch the food, and really, really interesting diversity and behavior. You think these critters would be hanging onto a rock for dear life, and they do that in the daytime, but at night they party. They get up on top of the rocks, they get carried downstream. And actually, that's where I got my start. My lab mate, now my wife of many, many years, and chief assistant, and I did our grad work going out to the Credit River doing drift. We'd be out there for 24 hours, emptying nets every half an hour to see what happens in the nighttime and the daytime, and seeing these huge numbers of critters ending up in the nets downstream at night. So that was our start in aquatic ecology.
There's a bigger story there, though. You met your wife. That's amazing. So no wonder you like insects so much. Yeah.
So she was also a faculty member. So we did a lot of our careers together.
Oh, so that's actually really nice.
Both at Windsor and at the University of Calgary now too.
No, she's now retired. She has more common sense than I do.
But she's not the Lifetime Achievement Award winner, so it's a trade-off, I suppose.
She is Niagara Award winner, Dr. Linda Corkum. She was
wonderful.
Past president of the society and really, really contributed in her own way.
Okay, let me remove my foot from my mouth before asking the next question, if that's okay. Next question, if that's okay. So microbiology, does this go back to like as a kid? Because I think about this a lot. My kids are always out in the dirt looking at bugs and looking at invertebrates, some of which are bugs. Some of which maybe aren't, but hell if I know. And so is this like go back to like childhood for you or what?
Oh yeah, well, lots of water, lots of camping and playing in wetlands and swimming in the lake, and whatever was there, that was what was interesting to me. So going right back to younger days when our folks would take us out camping.
So at what point did you think, okay, this is what I want to do for my career? Like I know you said in about third year you started thinking about that. But
I was always going to be a scientist, so that's always been really, really interesting. And just deciding on the aquatic systems when at university, that's when we started. And so I went on and did my grad work at University of Toronto, studying stream ecology, and then we went out to the University of Alberta and did more stream ecology there. And then the opportunity came to go to the University of Windsor as a prof. So we took our stream sampling equipment and landed in Windsor, which is flat as a pancake and has not many pristine streams at all. But there was a really big Great Lake just outside our door in the Detroit River there. And so having to drive several hundred kilometers to find a stream, we eventually settled on pollution problems in the Great Lakes. And when we got there in the 80s, mayflies had been gone for 40 years. We were told there are no mayflies left. And my colleague, Doug Hafner, who was an ecotoxicologist there, took us out on the lake to Middle Sister Island, which Carolyn will know about as well. were standing there by the boat looking up, and there were mayflies flying around. And we just happened to be starting at the very start when the first mayflies were returning back to Lake Erie. And so both Linda and I were really interested in that, and we spent our next few years studying all we could, both about the toxicology of burrowing mayflies in the lake, and also where these insects are at night when they emerge and they carry their body burdens of contaminant and nutrients back to shore, and how far inland they go, and how they feed the birds and things like that. So we went from being aquatic entomologists to being food web ecologists, because these mayflies and later on zebra mussels and all these other aquatic invertebrates are such an important part at the base of the food web.
So I want to say, I tell people that the most terrifying sampling I've ever done was sampling adult mayflies, because you have to walk into a swarm, and it's basically like the movie The Birds. They're just flying all around you. And it's nighttime. There are things in your eyes and all sorts of stuff. And you're trying to grab females and throwing them into a bag. It's the most crazy sampling I've ever done. And it did not involve a boat at all. So, you have mentored a lot of students over the years, Jan, and we asked some of them questions about like what it was to work with you and what types of things they appreciated. So I wanted to share a couple of clips about what people thought about your research and the way that you think about research. But I have to look at my notes. I wish I had a musical interlude. This is from Jesse Garda Acosta, and he's talking a little bit about what it was like to work with Jan.
It was always just kind of looking about the why or the how of science, I guess. How we could take what we've learned and translate it into something useful and applied. And I think that stuck with me because I find myself now with the federal government doing the exact same thing, and it's been pretty useful. And it makes it feel like you're not just out there collecting bugs, like you're doing this work and you're trying to make the lakes a better place. And I think Jan has always done that. He's been great at that. So that's one. So I want you guys to pay attention here. We're all researchers. Let's try to identify a theme. Okay. So that was Jesse. This is Mi-Sun Kang, who was a student of yours as well. Hopefully you can all hear this okay.
One of the aspects that you always shared with me as your student was kind of looking at things in a different way that I was always kind of taken aback by, just the way you kind of looked at a problem. And that has helped me try and explore and kind of evaluate different hypotheses.
Okay. So I have two more. One.
Bird, and I want to send you a special hello. And
this is Lisa Tulin.
Tell you that I think the collaboration that you worked on in the Great Lakes, particularly Lake Erie, was one of the key elements to educating people, but also getting people from different domains working together and improving the quality and greatly improving the knowledge and research on Lake Erie.
Right. And then, so that's Lisa Tulin. And then Michelle Dobrin said, over the course of my 20 plus on and off years with the lab, I've learned the importance of monitoring the lakes diligently and consistently. I've also come to appreciate the importance of collaboration. The lab has been involved in major collaborations among disciplines, institutions, even nations for the majority of time I've been around. Jan, you always work so hard to make connections, and your interest and keen sense of diplomacy has fostered these collaborations. This is especially important when studying an area as large and diverse as the Great Lakes. So, Stuart, did you see the theme?
Yes, Carolyn, I did see the theme. I saw several themes. Actually, what theme of the ones that I saw would you like me to discuss?
Well, I was going to ask Jan, actually, if he wanted to talk about, something that we heard is you were always a big picture person, and you're trying to bring collaborators together and do. So how did that sense of, how did it develop? That being that type of researcher, how did that develop?
It's a really good question. Well, the Great Lakes are a really big place, and there are huge, huge problems, and there's so many really good people around. And to think that any one person can address those questions and have the answers when there are so many good people around who are more experts than you are, the best way to try and answer those questions is to get all the experts together, get them to play nicely together, and give them a chance to look at what they really want to and not have to worry about all that other stuff that's somebody else's expertise. And really, the most amazing thing about the Great Lakes, about IAGLR, is it is one big family. I mean, we've got a huge ecosystem, huge problems, but a huge wealth of talent and a real willingness for people to work together and see the bigger picture together. All you need is a big enough room and the right sorts of beverages. And, people really are willing to work together. When we first started out and we saw all these challenges and all the experts, it was the idea of stone soup. I'm sure you've all heard that before. Individually, nobody has the resources, and we started, during one of the real valleys when all the funding was being cut everywhere. There were no options to work on your own. And so the only way to do it was to bring together your boat or your DNet or your Ponar Grab or your expertise, put them all in the room, recognize the common problems, and then, with different people in different places, you can get an awful lot of sampling done and really address those big questions. And you can ask the overall questions, and people can still answer their own special question, like why are mayflies more important than everything else?
Because they are.
But that's my exact question. So a lot of our audience, especially tonight in the live webinar room or whatever it is, but also who listen, are graduate students or early career researchers. How do you balance those two things? Because there's a pressure to publish, right? And I get this impression with like these really big picture things, you're going to get, not as many publications out of that. Is there a way to balance those, or do you have any advice on that kind of generally?
So the big picture things are all the little pieces put together. So everybody has their own little question. The first question, one of the reasons I think our lab has been so successful is it's both the lab and things like the Millennium Network is that they are open doors. Anybody who wants to take part is welcome. I don't think anybody ever walked in our lab door that we couldn't find something for them to do. And they meet the rest of the community and they find where their strengths are, where their complementarities are, and where they can go next. And so, yes, they're part of the big picture, but you're interested in mayflies or mites or detritus or dirt, well, we can find a project for you that results on that. And you're going to be the expert in dirt in 3 months. And that's not an exaggeration because so few people care about it. You're going to become an expert. And it's when you put those pieces together that you can see it. And you just need a few people to be able to put those parts together and assemble the jigsaw puzzle. Then you get the big answers. And to be fair, the agency people, the managers, we had some really visionary people who saw the benefit of this, and they really supported these groups coming together, and they made possible things like the network. They put out the EPA would make space on the Guardian, Environment Canada would make space on the Limnos, and good grief, we could just go out on the biggest boat in the Great Lakes, and third-year students were suddenly finding themselves out there as well, meeting the scientists and really setting the goal of their future. So it really is opportunity.
So you mentioned the Millennium Network. Can you just briefly talk about what that is? So it's the Lake Erie Millennium Network. And can you talk briefly about what it is?
So this was started in the mid-1990s, and there were 4 of us who started that. I was at the University of Windsor, but there were other people who also really believed in this collaborative idea. Jeff Reuter was the director of the Ohio Sea Grant. Murray Charlton was a scientist at CCIW, and Russ Kreis was the director of the Large Lakes Lab at Grosse Ile. And each one of these people, they would see the problems, like we're being overrun by zebra mussels. There's no phosphorus left in the lakes. What are we going to do? And each of these people would say, well, let's have a workshop. And they would bring in the local people to sit in a room and discuss what the problems are. The very same model, bring everybody in who wants to come, hash it out, come up with some ideas, some different hypotheses, and go out and test it. And so Jeff really was the impetus to start this, but Murray also brought these people together. And with 2 university people and 2 government people, 2 in Canada, 2 in the US, we said, well, let's put this together. Let's make this a network and invite anybody who wants to come to sit and have these meetings. We'll ask, what are the problems? When we see the problems, we'll ask, what are the solutions going to be? Then we'll write these white papers, these ideas about how things might work. And if everybody's part of it, when EPA or Environment Canada has funding, well, we're probably the best people to answer that question. So we generated our own momentum. We provided the research needs, and those managers, they found the funding to support these large-scale projects, and that really helped things go on. And we were on Lake Erie, but there were similar things going on like that on Lake Michigan and Lake Ontario. Again, key features, really collaborative, involved people who can bring people together and define the big problems and then go out and execute them. So the Great Lakes are unique in that community.
So it's interesting. So one theme I'm noticing is that you're a big time bug nerd, I think. Is that fair to say? Invertebrate nerd.
Everything nerd.
Yeah. Invert nerd, an invert. But you're also really interested in this big picture, which I think is fascinating because you use your nerdiness about invertebrates. Your deep interest and skills in working with invertebrates is another politer way to say it. But to answer some of these big questions too, so like what are some big things that we understand about the Great Lakes kind of as a result of the work that you've done or you've done with collaborators? If you want to be modest, I recommend not being modest, but obviously it works well for you, so whatever.
The big questions we've answered.
Answered is a hard word for scientists. I recognize that. I've taken off my scientist hat and put on my podcast host. But what are some issues you've been able to address, or what do we know about the Great Lakes as a result of your invert work?
Okay, so one of the things I've noticed over the years is that we seem to go from crisis to crisis. We talk about having long-term programs and so on, but every year there's a different crisis. Water level's too high, water level's too low, too many drysenids, lakes turning green, we've got a dead zone. Each one of those becomes a question that occupies everybody's mind, but it's an expression of what's going on in the Great Lakes. And all those different things go together as boxes and arrows. Boxes are, the numbers of different types of carbon or bugs or whatever. The arrows are the rates in which they flow. That's engineering or modeling, if you like it. And you can make a model as mathematical and complicated as you want, or as abstract. And this is another one of my themes is models go all the way from the beer-soaked napkin at the bar at the end of the day at IAGLR to the dials that the engineers turn on the water treatment plant at the other end. And you can make it as abstract or as detailed as you want, but somewhere along that continuum, you're going to find the model that fits the question that's the current crisis. And if you can engage people about talking that, you can come up with a model that everybody agrees on and is willing to take a piece of. When we start to fill in some of those boxes, then we can come up with some answers that match the crisis of the time. So.
But part of I'm not a professor, but I do notice that thing of like crisis to crisis or project to project, and that ability to maintain things beyond that, though, is like a real problem I see. Like with decision support tools, I've worked on developing some of those. I do the social science side of it. And people work really hard to develop a decision support tool, and then the funding runs out, and then they move on to the next thing, and who knows what happens to the support tool or the people who are supposed to be helping. And so have you found success in like bridging those gaps between, projects or trying to make some sort of coherent theme or make some coherent difference?
That's probably the most creative part, is reinventing the same group of people, the same set of questions to match the latest crisis coming up there.
Yeah.
I think both the members of the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement have recognized the need for long-term monitoring, and by coming up with both the GLRI and the Water Quality Agreement, there's been a real commitment to longer-term funding. Yes, there are year-to-year projects that only last a year or two, but behind that is a real backbone of seeing the Great Lakes as an ongoing problem. And in addition to having, professors at universities whose funding start and stop, we have some tremendous institutions. We have NOAA, we have Environment Canada at CCIW, we have Fisheries and Oceans, we've got Great Lakes Science Center. All of these people are committed to career length monitoring. And really, I just argue that research is only monitoring when you've got a hypothesis. It's the same thing. And they provide the backbone that lets us keep going as these different things come along. And again, being able to have a forum like the network where everybody can come together and fertilize ideas across one another is what really keeps things going.
Sure. And I'll put links to some of these. I'm so incompetent as a host, but I'm the host we got. I will put links to these in our show notes, which you can see at www.teachmeaboutthegreatlakes.com/12, because this is episode 12.
I'll make one more point about continuity, and the real continuity in the Great Lakes is IAGLR, which crosses all of those boundaries. And at their annual meeting, they give us a chance to talk about these things as well.
Excellent.
And it's really great that in these like the COVID-19 times and stuff like that, there was such an effort to do the virtual environment. That was really cool. Okay, let's get real, Jen. What's the craziest field story you have?
So I was talking to Linda about this to see which ones would be appropriate. None of them are embarrassing. I have two. Both of them involve mayflies. One involves when we were starting to look at how quickly mayflies are coming back. We thought we have to find out how far can mayflies fly inland. So we came up with blacklight traps. And this is what a blacklight is? Okay. So we got battery-powered blacklights. We set them on top of galvanized pails with carbon dioxide in the bottom so that a bug would sort of hit the trap and drop into the pan. And to see how far they were going, we had to put them at increasing distances away from the lake. So we would find dark country roads, and we put one just 50 meters away, and then 100 and 200, 400, 800, 5 kilometers away from land. We're just out in the middle of nowhere. So think about a Friday night at 2 a.m, because mayflies only fly at night. And somebody is driving with their date back into town. And suddenly, out of this corner of the eye, there's this blue thing with some strange people standing around it, huddled over a pail. I think, what was that? 2.5 kilometers later, there's another one, and it's gone. And then 1.25 kilometers later, and as they get closer and closer to the lake, they get more and more abundant. And by this time, they have to stop and ask. And guess who they ask? What are you guys doing at 2 a.m? And we have to explain all about mayflies and the recovery of Lake Erie. So that's one story that we have to tell. The other one involves going out at night, sampling aquatic invertebrate drifts for 24 hours. You have to walk out into the stream, a rocky stream, 3 a.m. There's not a cloud, not a star in the sky. Things are clouded over. You can't use a flashlight because you might scare the bugs. You don't want to disturb things. And so, by the time you've been up for 18 hours, you know that Freddy is not really out there to get you, but you're never quite sure from Nightmare on Elm Street. So you go out there, and these nets are about this size, and they get all this detritus on the side. So what you have to do is you have to sort of massage it down so all the bits go into the net, and then you have to reach inside. So 3 a.m, I'm there by myself, wading out into the Credit River. A light mist is falling. You can hear strange, I think it's background. I went to go and get the net, and it goes, wriggle! And because it's pitch dark, a brown trout about this size was head first in the net. And when I went to shake it, it shook my hands back. And it was one of the scariest nightmares I've ever had. But we let the trout go. That was the end of that. So
you have a spine. Get out of here.
I don't want you on your spine. That's good. Yeah, field life is an interesting life. I don't do field biology anymore. I was for a while. I'm a social scientist now. I did fisheries biology for a bit, and I do miss. There's a camaraderie with the field that there isn't anywhere else, right? And sometimes it's not always the healthiest or best camaraderie, but it is there, and it is something that I genuinely miss.
We certainly remember the good times. We remember the bad times too, but they become good times as well in retrospect.
No, that they do.
They're all good times.
That they do. So if you are a graduate student, and you can do more field work, now's the time, because eventually you'll get families or you'll get responsibilities, and the time for that decreases.
Being part of that field team can be the best time of your life, really. The friends you make there and the acquaintances, they last forever. So you never lose track of your old friends.
Yeah,
that's true. Because, you have a lot of crazy adventures. But earlier today, IAGLR hosted a JEDI, Just Equity Distribution, diversity and inclusion session. It'll be available online afterward. But given all the discussion that's happening right now, I was reminded a couple months ago, I was able to hear Catalina Martinez, who is a physical scientist at NOAA, and she was talking about how to help graduate students and get more students interested in science and how to pull them in. And one of the things she said was basically like take a chance on people, that if you see someone, so if anybody, I don't know if anyone on this list is a Gilmore Girls fan, but if anybody imagines Paris from the Gilmore Girls, who was like angry that she couldn't volunteer on Thanksgiving because she wasn't going to get into Harvard if she didn't have those extracurriculars. She had her perfect GPA. She had straight A's. So Jan, in your lab, did you bring in students who maybe didn't have the perfect record, and what did that mean for your lab?
We I was talking with Linda about this today, and we've always had a really open lab. We had a big lab because in the summertime there's so many things to do. We've got a billion mayflies to sort, and so we always had an open door. We always advertised for work study students. And if somebody came in the door and wanted to volunteer, we always found something for them to do. We wouldn't just let them volunteer. We just figured work is work, and we'll find a way to support what you're doing. And so we recruited an awful lot of people, people who were just interested in critters and bugs and meeting other people. And because we had such a diversity, another philosophy we had is that everybody in our lab learns to do everything, whether it's dirt or bugs or so on. And that really built bridges across ideas. It convinced people that they can do absolutely everything. And some of our most successful people came in as work study students only because they needed support to get through school. But we had such enthusiasm in the lab that they got interested, and some of them changed directions, and some of them are now our top Great Lakes scientists as well. So giving people the opportunity really is an important sort of thing. And I guess the biggest problem is how do you advertise that you can make that opportunity available for anyone? Because just even knowing about that is really difficult. We had a discussion about this at Calgary today with the grad students. How do you let people know that the doors are open, that they're welcome to come in? You know, we can invite people, but if you're not there to hear the invitation, you're not going to take it. So.
Right. Did you come up with any key steps that you were going to follow at the University of Calgary?
I had to leave the discussion before we got to the end of that, so I don't have an answer for that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I have a couple more recordings from some of your students related to the environment in your lab and sort of what they thought. So this is Shiva.
Well, most of my memories of Jan are just like little snippets of things here and there, like being out in the oil sands with Jan, and his hard hat was always on askew, and Jan always had like an interesting fact, or like just he knew so much about everything. He was always able to talk about wherever we were, whatever we were doing, or reference a study, and Jan was just awesome to be around. And you could always tell that the other researchers really respected him and loved him. And one of my favorite things that happened...
Oh, I forgot that she's got a really great story, and I'm going to send this to you, but I'm not going to play that story right now. It's really good, though.
Oh, one of those stories. Okay. Well, I'm excited. But so this is something that impresses me, is that like Carolyn reached out to it. So you had this really amazing lab group, is my understanding. And I don't know if we cleared this in advance. I forgot to say Carolyn used to work for Jan. So we are conflicted as can be, but this isn't journalism, so we don't care. And when Carolyn heard that it was going to be Jan, she was so excited that we have other co-hosts. She shoved them aside and said, no, this is going to be me. And that was fine, other than since it's COVID, like the one that was hospitalized is very grumpy with us. But anyway, but what has been consistently, everything I've heard is just this love that people have for how welcoming you were. And, so Carolyn reached out and she was like, I need some stuff. And like, she's got this stack of videos. I mean, digital things don't have the thickness, but if they did, it would be like that thick, and audio and people reaching out and people saying they're going to reach out, and you know how it is. And so it's just been really impressive. And I think kind of inspirational, I think, to that idea, like you're saying, of having an open door and caring about people and, finding something for people who are interested to do regardless of, their GPA, or if like me, they took genetics twice, including once with their future wife's notes.
I know.
Yeah. So I think that is something that I've been really impressed with.
Right. And so I have all these and I'll send them to you, Jan. But one more I wanted to say is from Yakuta Bakat. And she mentioned specifically that despite your perpetually heavy workload, you have always made time for your students in mentoring them and helping them learn and grow as scientists. And then she also said that when people learn about the tenure in her lab, they instantly respond with a smile and look that can best be interpreted to mean, well, she's one of Jan's students, so she must know what she's talking about. So thank you. And I guess anybody who wants to learn to be a good mentor, I told people if I made it through today without crying, I would do well. But if anyone wants to learn how to be a good mentor, reach out to Jan Suborowski, because he really did always have an open door. So thank you on behalf of all the students. And there's a lot of good people doing great work because of the help you gave them. So
thanks a lot, Caroline. That really means a lot.
I can think of no greater testimony than that. But I'll be honest, Jan, as wonderful it is, that's actually not why we invited you on Teach Me About the Great Lakes. Making Carolyn cry is always a benefit, but it is not the primary reason. The primary reason is we have 2 questions that we'd like to ask all of our guests, starting, about 3 episodes ago, because we're an evolving organism here at Teach Me About the Great Lakes. And the first of these is, to me, the most critical, which is, if you could choose a great donut for breakfast or a great sandwich for lunch, but not both, you got to pick one or the other, which would you choose?
Hands down, it would be the great sandwich.
Great sandwich.
I can't eat breakfast. I love donuts, but I got to wait till lunch to eat, and so it's got to be the great sandwich.
Well, you can have donuts for lunch. I don't know if they do that in Canada, but in America, we very often have donuts for lunch.
Do you know someone named Fred Penner?
No. Should I?
Oh, he's a great Canadian musician, and his theme song is "I love sandwiches. I eat them all the time."
Okay.
Get that and add that to your theme song for your closing.
You know what? It'll be linked in the show notes. I can promise you that. So great. All right. So do you live in Calgary now? Did you move to Calgary, or are you?
Yes. Yeah, we live in Calgary.
Do they let award winners wear wherever they want? Okay. So when I'm in Calgary next time, I will put on my coat, my warm coat, and a toque. Right, and I will walk in Calgary in July. And where should I go to get a great sandwich in Calgary?
Our kitchen.
Like literally Jan's kitchen.
That's right.
Done and done. Sorry, everybody. Welcome. This is only available to eligible hosts. But next time I'm in Calgary, I'm going to your kitchen, Jan. That's wonderful. So what's a good sandwich? What do you like to put in your?
Cheese and salami.
And just good, fresh, delicious stuff.
Lettuce and arugula. Hot sauce, yeah.
I love a good piece of arugula. There's a history with arugula that we won't go into. You don't need to know about, although you may. Anyway, all right. So the second question that I think is really important is, what is one piece of life advice you might have for our listeners? It can be big or little, silly or serious. It can be something that you thought of, something you got from RuPaul, whatever you think. What is a piece? We like to leave people with a little nice life message.
Okay. This is a Carolyn will know what this question is. It's the question I challenge everybody with. It can be your piece of life advice. Whatever you're working on, whatever you've written up, what is the title? Because if you haven't summarized it down to title, first you can say, oh, that's really hard. But you need to be able to summarize what you're working on in a title. If you don't have a title, you haven't really thought it through yet. So you need to think a little bit harder. So what is your title? There we go.
That's actually really, really good and really, really nice. And immediately I start thinking of my work, of course, but then I start reflecting on my greater life. And I'm like, right now my title involves a lot of ellipses. So maybe it's time to work on that. Well, Jan Suborowski, IAGLR Lifetime Achievement Award winner. First of all, congratulations. And it seems to me, based on the little research I've done, that it's extraordinarily well-deserved and based on just a lifetime of fantastic work. And second of all, I encourage people to visit do you have a website or something you'd like to send people to?
I do. I have one that's very old and out of date, uwindsor.ca/.
It's It's okay. I never know ours. It's fine.
Okay.
You're good. Nobody knows the website.
And there's also a University of Calgary, ucalgary.ca/contacts.
There we go. Tell you what, we will put it on in the show notes. Anybody who's interested could go there and check it out. And thank you so much for agreeing to appear on Teach Me About the Great Lakes.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a great opportunity. It's wonderful to see you and see you again, Carolyn, and to hear all of this stuff. And really thank you to IAGLR and thank you to the Great Lakes Committee. I miss you guys so much, everybody. So thanks again.
That was really amazing, and what an opportunity to talk to an award winner. We'd like to thank our hosts at IAGLR for inviting us. Carolyn, what is something that you learned about the Great Lakes today?
Well, mayflies are the best. I didn't learn that today. But one thing that I learned that is, I'm sorry, unrelated to the Great Lakes, but how have I not taught you about Fred Penner? There's always anytime I'm a co-host, there's Canadian content. You always make some kind of joke about it. And I cannot believe that I haven't taught you about Fred Penner. So I learned that I am remiss in my duties as Canadian. I would also...
That'll just have to be the spin-off podcast. Teach Me About Fred Penner. It'll be like 2 episodes, but it'll probably be solid episodes. Yeah.
I would also really, really, really like to thank everyone who submitted movies and documents that we're able to share with Jan and talk, because I really think it really shows what it was really like to be in his lab. So, and thank you to Jess Ives for her help wrangling all those up. Jess Ives is also working hard at IAGLR. I believe she's hosting a session tomorrow. I apologize if I have that wrong, Jess. Okay, Stuart, what did you learn about
There we go.
today?
That's usually the follow-up there. Right. Actually, what I want to talk about, too, something about this, I think it was a bigger picture thing, is not about the Great Lakes, although I did learn something about mayflies that many people think they're awesome. I feel like that's up for debate as to like the relative status among the animal kingdom. I mean, even in the plant kingdom, frankly, in all of life. But I mean, mayflies are certainly a thing that exist. But what I really learned is this, is that, if you are thoughtful enough and if you're careful enough, it's possible to blend a bunch of different things. It's possible to blend like the small picture stuff, whether that's mayflies or whether that's, whatever it is that you're nerdy about, right? Find the thing you're nerdy about. But it's possible to blend that with these bigger picture things. And if you get enough of these people together who are nerdy about something but willing to look at this bigger picture, and you get, and I wrote this down, a big enough room and the right kind of beverages, you can get all sorts of people to work together. And I think that that's actually a really important message, whether you're, an academic or a quasi-academic like I am, or I think anywhere, right? And so that sort of big picture thing is what I've been thinking about the most. So Carolyn, where can people find our stuff? I never remember the things. Do you remember some things?
So you can visit, so we are both with Illinois Indiana Sea Grant. You can visit iiseagrant.org. We are also on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and maybe YouTube. ILIN Sea Grant.
At all those.
And it's,
what about the buoys? We got some buoys. If you didn't hear our last episode.
No. First I have to say CSEA, not the letter C. But yeah, then we also have a lot of our specialists are on Twitter, including 2 real-time buoys that tweet. But then there's also a whole bunch of other people. So we encourage you to learn more about what we're doing to help. You can visit the IAGLR website at iaglr.org. And when you're there, you can learn about the society, the conferences. They have a journal, they have awards and scholarships that are available for graduate students. I encourage you to reach out there too. And thanks again to Ed Verhamy and Paul Sibley, but mostly Ed Verhamy for helping set this up.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you to Ed. Thank you to Carolyn. Thank you to Jan. And everybody, I encourage you to go to teachmeaboutthegreatlakes.com. Subscribe, rate, review, all of those things. Tell your friends about us if you have friends. If you don't have friends, go make some friends expressly to tell them about the show. And in between now and then, keep laking those greats and keep greating those lakes. Awesome.